Well, thank you so much. I am I am really honored to be here. I think that it's extremely timely, as we all know. I thought a lot about what I was going to say and how I was going to present. I was listening to everyone, and it's so wonderful that we are here. But I want us to remember a few things. I remember when I first came, when I was brought here. I remember this energy in Rochester, and it became a place where I literally considered moving there. And I considered moving to Rochester because of the people, because of the community, because of Jerome and Jackie and all the people, the Jackies and all the people that were there, and Bag. And I realized that I would be surrounded by people who are doers, people who are not just talking about what needs to happen, but are on the ground working with folks. That's where I've always been and always wanted to be. And I said to Jerome, I said, we have to make this happen. But I want us to understand a little bit about change. I want to talk about change, and then I'm going to move from this notion of wanting change to what that looks like and what we need to do, each one of us individually in our own lanes. And what I want to start with is, understanding change was something that was in my undergraduate work, was so important to me. I wanted to understand what does this mean when we say we want change? Because in America, it's cliche. We need change. Matter of fact, everywhere you go in the world, we need change. And while we know we need change, we even often want change. We go out kicking and screaming when it comes to change. And so, what we have to begin to observe in the environment that we're in today, when we start looking at what's going on in the world, if you guys push it back for the 2000, I don't know when I came. It was more than 10 years ago that I came to Rochester, and I remember this whole idea of you know people getting upset over things. These things are terrible. We need to do something. So here's kind of how change happens. First of all, you have the folks like America. America's pathology is America's denial, which has brought us to today. Denial. So the first thing that happens is people start questioning, are you sure there's something that needs changing? You all remember that. When people would say things like, to me, I know this is when diversity training was, the thing to do. They'd go, yeah, you're not going to get controversial though, are you? You're not going to like say, use, let's not say racism. We can talk about prejudice. I mean, that's where we started with just the denial, so much so that we couldn't even have the conversation, right? So then there are folks that were saying, well, come on, look at how much better things are. What are you complaining about? After all, you had a black president. I mean, whatever you need, whatever the day is, whatever the time is, there's always a reason to negate the reality. Okay. And then you reach a point where people go, yeah, there is this thing, racism. Okay. Uh, yeah, but I don't know that it's that bad. It's just, it's fringe people. It's just a small crew of people that are behaving badly. And then what happens is we, throughout our lives, everybody that's a people of color, indigenous folks, First Nations people, Latinx people, there's no confusion here for us about this reality that we of living in this skin. And I'm sure you covered all that really, really great. But I want to talk about how we get to change, because we talk about it. First of all, we deny it, then we talk about it, and then we do research on talking about it, and we do research on the research about talking about it. And all of those things happen until there is a breaking point, until we reach a place where we go, oh no, this isn't fringe. This isn't a few folks. One of the most disturbing things that happened for me, like most of the people in the world that watched what happened at the Capitol. First of all, I don't think anybody of color was surprised about what happened, and I think a whole lot of other folks weren't surprised. But what struck me as most offensive was when I heard people saying, this is not America. This is not America. And I mean, that I was jarred by that because there is a preponderance of evidence that it is indeed America. In fact, it is very much America. It is the foundation, it is the root of America. So much so that the last people in the world that you thought would say it, the FBI. The FBI said in 2020 that the number one domestic threat to America was white supremacy. And that if we don't do something about it, it's going to undo the country. And so I want to get up close and personal with this because it becomes cerebral. We talk about these things so much that it's between the ears. It's between the ears. It's on the lip. It's cliche. But change does not happen until we're on the precipice of catastrophe. And friends, we are there. Well, we have to understand that what's at stake is not that, people of color, Black people are going to get a little bit more of that crust of bread that they deserve. That's not what it means, right? It's not that, oh my goodness, we're going to make certain that those books that are out of date, we'll replace them. What we're talking about here is something that is integral to the foundation, the fabric of this country. And that it doesn't just mean that, oh my God, these people are going to get a crust more, these people are going to get more money. It means that if we don't do this, there will not be an America. I said this years ago. I said, we are dangerously underestimating just how critical this is. And then I saw people in 2020, 2021 going, this isn't America. And I'm going, oh my gosh, you better know that this is America, because we most certainly cannot go forward if you don't understand that this is woven into the fabric. So much so that the FBI said, we got to get a grip on this. And they didn't want to say that. So then we have to move to, in order for change to happen, there has to be not only an awareness of it. We've studied it to death. We don't need to study it anymore. We're clear about it. But for some reason, there has to be a push. And we're getting that push. And I want to say it, I said it before when I met with folks in Rochester many years ago. I said, we are creating a perfect storm for America's enemies. A perfect storm. And see, then we're not talking about whether or not, we got these many votes or we're, whatever we're doing to the red line over here. We're talking about other folks that are saying, oh gosh, we know how to pull the rug out under America. And it's around these issues of race and racism. And it's this issue that it is now a crisis. It has always been a crisis. It has always been. Only, I just have to say, white people are seeing and feeling it now. So, in Dante's Inferno, the book, this man is taking this other individual through, hell, the stages and levels of hell. And he said the hottest place in hell is reserved for those that are faced with a moral dilemma and choose to remain neutral. And in my opinion, if we don't take action, then we're being neutral. And if we're being neutral, I remember talking to a really, really wise elder years ago. And he says, we were talking about this notion of sin, and sin, if you were traveling in the Middle East, if you were in times of Moses and the times of Christ, if you were traveling, there was at the end of the road a pyramid kind of shaped rocks that are kind of put in a pyramid shape. And that marker right there is to tell you this is where the road ends. We don't know what's past that. We just don't know what's past it. And when you pass the mark, you miss the mark. And that is what sin is, to miss the mark, and then you're lost. And so this elder that I'm speaking to talked about the fact that not only are people behaving badly and impacting other people, when you sin, when you miss the mark, in that moment, when we commit whatever that act is or the lack of action, we rob the world in that moment of goodness and we add to the pollution. And that perspective really helped me as an individual, saying it's not about me being found out or whatever I've done. It's about me robbing myself in the world in that moment of goodness at a point in which I had a choice to. This is integrity in a moment of choice. That's where we find ourselves. And I remember I spoke with Jerome earlier, and he's my brother. We bounce off our ideas off each other. And I remember saying to him that I was watching a movie. I was, all of us are droning out, right? Zooming out on
Really in Tarjay with my titties swinging.
oh. Not sure where that came from, but okay. So I am looking at this movie, and there's an intense scene with an African American man and his son, and he's a dad coach, and his son is an athlete, and he's telling him you got to be better than better, better than better. You got to be the best. And he makes a statement. He says, "We don't have the luxury of being average." And it was so striking because it was one of those kind of typical dad and son teenager, not you're not hearing me. But when he said that, he stepped out of character for a moment to talk about his blackness. We don't have the luxury to be average. And this is what we've been told our entire existence on this land, that we don't have the luxury of being average. We have to be better. We have to be twice as good. We have to work twice as hard. And we have. And we have. And we then have to look at what's the fruit of all that work. What's the fruit of those 339 years of unpaid labor? Where's the fruit? And the fruit obviously is us. It is obviously our resilience. It's all of those things. But I want to talk a moment about MLK. People refer a lot to him, to MLK. And one of the things that happened to him when he went to India, because he, of course, studied, nonviolent protests from Gandhi. He was going there to learn. And when he got there, of course, they had known. Everyone had heard about Martin Luther King Jr., all the things he'd done, all of the suffering, all of that. And when they introduced him as an untouchable. They said, here he was, this is a group of people, the Dalit people who are considered untouchable. And they were saying, here is another untouchable from another land. And Martin Luther King, for a moment, got in his feelings. He just referred to me as untouchable. Because we don't see the parallels. You see, words, it's amazing. But I wanted to read something from Caste. And this is, Isabel Wilkerson. I can't even say more about her. She, Warmth of the Other Suns, brilliant, amazing. I want to read this one passage so that we can get kind of a perspective on where we are in America, as one of the first world countries. We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that is beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable, loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations, cracks patched, but the deep ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures and built in the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is in fact on our hands. Unaddressed, The ruptures and diagonal cracks will not fix themselves. The toxins will not go away, but rather will spread, leach, and mutate as they already have. When people live in an old house, they come to adjust to the idiosyncrasies and outright dangers skulking in an old structure. They put buckets under a wet ceiling, propping up groaning floors, learn to step over that rotting wood in the staircase. The awkward becomes acceptable, and the unacceptable becomes merely inconvenient. Live with it long enough, and the unthinkable becomes normal. Exposed over the generations, we learn to believe that the incomprehensible is the way that life is supposed to be. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone articulate that so well. This is the house we find ourselves in. It is cracked, it is leaking, it is America, it is Rochester. And part of that leaking, part of that break is racism. And so I've been thinking about repair because honestly, at the end of the day, that's what we're getting. We're getting to healing. And, people have often looked at my work on historical trauma, post-traumatic, and they've said, well, and they're okay with, people healing and people, changing their trajectory. And they're all okay with that. At least it seems like they are. But somehow that it doesn't occur to them that change piece that I'm talking about, the part that requires a real exchange of power. So people will say, so, is post-traumatic a clinical diagnosis? No, it is not. And like I tell people, I wish it was. I wish we could sit in a room and talk to people softly, twice a week and then make it okay. Throw a little medication in there, maybe we'll be fine. This is not a clinical diagnosis. This is not a pathologizing of an entire group of people. It is a people who are weary with doing the work, being twice as good, running from averageness. It is not a space where we look at ourselves and we go, wow, if we could just get a little therapy. No. This requires justice. This requires more than words and symbolism. And there's nothing wrong with taking down statues. I worked to have some statues taken down. Let me just tell you that right now, because I know that it's an assault on my spirit to have to watch them and to see them, and our children to see these things that represent, well, our Holocaust. And that's a good thing. I think it's probably a good idea to take old Uncle Ben off, off the carton. I think it's good to remove, horrible names. I mean, that calling, the names of teens and all of these things. But you see, this is symbolism. Martin Luther King was about movement. Movement. It was a movement, the civil rights movement, action. But it's become a monument. Monuments don't move. And so we can ill afford to become the monuments of our day. We have to become the action of our day, as everyone has said. We have to move in this thing. And what we find ourselves experiencing over and over again is, well, we're gonna we're gonna take the photo ops. We're gonna send nice little printouts in a newspaper. But if people can't own the land they're standing on, if they can't, manage their lives because they don't have access, not because they are twice as good, because then we're denied, oh my God, you went to school, you got all this, great. Well, you have one more problem here because you don't have experience. But how do I get the experience? You see, the rules change. And so it's not enough for me to just say, I'm going to heal silently on my own or in clinic or anywhere else. And that's a great thing, but healing also requires justice. So this is not a therapeutic designation. This is about fairness, equity, all of those wonderful words that we espouse, but we need to make evident. I was saying to my grandchildren, because I realize that I've moved into that space in my life where I can share with them some things that their parents certainly can't share. But I now understand what my grandmother shared with me. And I remember, we are a people of faith. We are a people of belief. We're a people uh, that hold fast to truth. And so I work with the youth in my community, and I work with the youth in my faith community. I work with the youth in my family. I actually got them all together, all the youth, my grandnieces and nephews, my grandchildren, and I made books for each of them. And in those books, it took me months to make. I placed all the things that I had learned that inspired me, that woke me up and kept me awake. I put all of those things that I thought and I hoped would spark in their hearts so that they could remember their true selves, their real selves, their authentic selves, not the made up stuff, not the thing you're texting, but that thing that in the dead of night you speak with, that spirit. I wanted them to come in touch with it because they were so caught up and distracted in the world. And so I said to them, ask them about faith. Ask them what they thought faith was. And of course, I have smart, grandchildren. They buzzed off some words about faith. I said, faith has three areas, or there are three things that faith embodies. One, to believe in your heart, to confess with your tongue, and to give evidence in your actions. And if you don't have all three, you don't have faith. And so what I realize is everything, even faith itself, requires action, movement, change. And that change that we are talking about, that everyone so far has talked about, has been really elusive, because now it's not that we don't know, because first it is a no, then it is a do, but we have long known. Now it comes down to the tough part. And that tough part has to do with, sharing. Okay, no, not just sharing the nice pictures or even removing the ugliness in terms of what we are visually seeing. But we're talking about equity now. We're talking about, our share of things. And that's where you start seeing all of these things emerge that push you back. Because that means that I have just access to the stuff. Okay, to the stuff. Because everybody wants to give up everything except power, money, position, autonomy. They don't want to give that up. And that's where the fight is right now. So what Dr. Joy is getting ready to talk about is not going to be talk about all what we already know. For those who didn't know, we built this house and we're in it. And if we don't do something, that house is coming down. So let's talk about accountability, right? Because that's the first step, is accountability. So I heard a lot of people, representatives, individuals they're talking about we're putting some steps in place. You got to know where we are in time, though, because we don't have a lot of time here. Okay, I'm just saying, it's not like this is new. This has been going on a long time. George Floyd woke the world up because you couldn't lie to the world anymore because we saw the lynching publicly. Can't lie to the world anymore. So what is it that we need to know other than divvying up the goods fairly and justly? So I don't need for you to orchestrate for me how I move through the world, that I have the power to do that. We've built our own cities. We built them and they were burnt to the ground. So we don't necessarily need someone to tell us how to do it because we know how to do it. It's like, what did James Brown say? Open up the door and I'll get it myself. And the bottom line is those doors still remain shut. Theoretically, philosophically, they are, but in reality, they're shut. And so we have to ask, where's the accountability? For example, I'm watching like everyone else with COVID. Matter of fact, I'm on the sun hasn't even come up where I am. I am always looking at and listening to and paying attention to what is going on around us. All Black folks have been taught to do that. From the time I was a child, I was taught to pay attention to what's going on in my environment. The only difference now is we have, the internet. So everybody can zone in and zone out. We can do it. So as I'm paying attention to what's going on around me, I noticed something that occurred. A couple of things. We had the twin pandemics. And on one pandemic, they said, okay, you know what? People are sick. We want them to stay home. We don't want to have to worry about their children and all that. So we're going to put trillions of dollars. You know, we go all they're talking about numbers I can't even figure out. I probably couldn't write it. The numbers in terms of what they are now doling out to people because they understand the suffering. Which said to me, they could always been doling it out. Okay, first of all, we can always do that. You're having problems in the community, you want to rebuild, you want to structure, we can make that happen. So I said, wow, that could have happened a long time ago. Instead of people suffering and all of the stuff we're looking in our communities that are run down, you have people who've lost hope, you have violence, you have all these things going on. There could have been immediate response to that, but there wasn't, well, until it impacted everybody. But I think if they would have helped us and people of color, well, everybody would have been helped. Because see, it's not the other way around. People would mean, wait a minute, are you giving them, is that, I don't, affirmative action, you're robbing us? Trust me, if a Black child gets it, everybody else gets it. If it's a support for a Black child or a Latinx child, everybody gets it, but it's not the other way around. So there's, again, a mythology. Oh my God, it's unfair. We're getting an unfair slice of something. First of all, we can't even go down that street. So then I started thinking about something odd that happened at the Capitol. And then I started looking at something else that happened at the inauguration. They said, well, you know what? We're going to start checking. We're going to start checking these armed guardsmen, the ones that are there, because we saw the lack of response. We saw something, which of course communities of color have always seen, how people can kind of turn their head when it's white people behaving badly. We've always known that. But they took it a step further. They created a precedent. They said, we're going to vet. Stay with me. We're going to vet these armed guards. And they went and looked. Oh, wait a minute. You've been on Facebook. You're connected to white supremacists, or you're just a criminal. Whatever the case. They said, we need to vet them. And we're vetting them so we can protect the senators. Stay with me. We're vetting them. We're going in, we're looking, we go, oh, no, you can't show up. Because we can't trust that you can deliver justly and fairly the protections necessary here for these folks. Not if you've already said we need to eliminate them in the first place. And there was precedence. And so I looked at that for a moment. And I said, no matter what was in place, we're going to check you out and take you out, which they did. Why is that not happening in our communities across America with policing? Stay with me. Because I'm talking about now, we're talking about something that we see it. No, we can't even talk about it. We have reams of a preponderance of evidence of how assaultive, dangerous police officers, police chiefs, Norm Stamper, he said, look, this is what's embedded in policing. Is white supremacy and racism. Why are we not vetting every officer in America? And I'm gonna tell you, every officer in every city in America needs to be vetted to find out if, oh, wait a minute. Not only are you not gonna protect me, you've made it your business to destroy me. Why are they not vetted? Oh, wow, police unions. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But what we have is precedents that you can do something about it. Oh, and it's not just police officers. It's teachers and it's administrators. Stay with me, Rochester. Stay with me for a moment. Rochester, I can tell you, I wanted to move there because I saw the energy. I walked in to master classes of teachers whose love for their students flowed so heavily that the children that left the class, went to another class, would come back to visit just so they could get that love beamed at them again. I watched children emerge from trauma. And I saw it. I saw the Victorious Minds Academy that was created there. And it was just one administrator away from getting totally turned backwards. with me here, because if we want change to happen, if we want to move to this actionable space, I'm sorry, we have to build in something that stops you from sending us in reverse. So we know that we what right now everybody's looking at 8 years of a presidency and hoping we'll get 8 years. And we know that the next 8 years following that, we could go 20 years backwards. It just doesn't seem like something intelligent people should be going through, a civilization of our liking. How can it be that we can be aware of a truth, all accept that truth, and then completely deny it and go backwards? So I'm in a place right now where however, I don't know where I'm checking out, but I want to see something happen that you cannot reverse because you get Joe Stupid in. And I'm talking about on any level: superintendents, school boards, unions. If you have those set in there, all the work you've done, and I watched it. I watched people pour out their hearts only to have somebody, oh gosh, we have a new administration, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Yeah, poor little black children, we're not going to do that. Yeah, we're going to build something over here, or paint a wall or something, but we're not going to place in there sustainable change that does not assault my great great grandchildren yet unborn. That's accountability. So you tell the teacher, gosh, I think you need to include these things. I tell people all the time, I don't just tell teachers you need to include this as some sort of extra. Race, culture, diversity is the center of everything that we do in this country. It's not just an aside that we add during Black History Month. It's not a moment of recognition. It's what we are. It's intrinsic to the fiber of everything in this country instead of being ancillary. And we keep trying to put it over there because we don't want to share. At the end of the day, folk don't really want to share. They'll share some stuff, but not power. And that's why everybody's freaking out right now, is because they're going, oh my God, are we losing power? Hey, the writing's on the wall. You're outnumbered. You're really outnumbered. It's just a matter of time. But at the same time, we kind of sit around, we got really good, but we got to put the get on a terra firma about this. We have to hold our leadership accountable, our educators accountable, our law enforcement. That's just level one. That's just level one. When we start vetting folks and going, yeah, we get you out of here. And if that's hard for people in terms of vetting people for white supremacy, let's just do a little bias assessment. And you can, like I said, we find out that you have some bias. Instead of seeing a wallet, you see a gun, especially if it's a Black or brown person holding it. We find that out about you because we do the bias. And stay with me, because these are existent and have been around for just quite a bit of time. We've had this, the ability to look at whether someone's biased. Now, let's look at COVID. Okay, because it doesn't stop with teachers and police officers and armed guard. It's in the health field too. And you have folks that are going to the Klan meeting that wear white shirts and white coats. Stay with me, right? So we can't even make the assumption. Are they vetted? Are these the people that when there are two ventilators and there are two white people and there is one Black person, who gets the ventilator? And can I trust that decision is being made based on something that's reasonable, that's medical, or is it that see, no one thinks about it. And I may be a little paranoid, but there's a preponderance of evidence. We've even seen those disparities as it relates to COVID, the kinds of treatment people get, the kind of advocacy that's necessary. I'm not making this up. So I'm saying, when do we get to a point where we go, okay, we're going to vet this person? We've noticed that you have some bias here. You have a little anxiety, anger, angst with people of color. Okay, you can probably still be a nurse, but we're not going to let you anywhere near people of color. You can be a police officer, but you can't be in these communities. Are you following me? Until we reach a point where it moves from, we know it, we've studied it, we've evaluated it. Now we have to take an actionable step. And I'm saying, before I get up out of here, we're going to have to vet some of these people. I'm not going to sit up here and hope the police officer that we call is not, attending the white supremacy meetings on the weekend. I'm not, again, There's something wrong with that. And why do I feel that concern? Because policing came from slave patrols, which was based on the ability to terrorize Black people. So I mean, I'm not just, it's not something that, like, again, there's a wealth of knowledge. So then we get to, what does repair look like? Let's take a look at that. So in my opinion, we're talking about reparations at this point. Repair, right? I'm not talking about saying you're sorry. I'm not even talking about people going, we know racism exists. Yeah, I need to see that in writing, and I need to see that somewhere that is going to sustain change. Otherwise, we all go to sleep, and a couple of more officials, and we find our children and those who become our heirs, we see them holding catastrophe and trying to navigate catastrophe. And I can't live with that. So I got to do my part to, again, so I think vetting, that's just part one of reparations. We got to vet people, get the crazies out. Now, who's going to stop you? The unions? Oh yeah, they don't have to do that. All right. We all of a sudden, everything you get all the way up there and they go, yeah, we're not going to do it. Well, that's why we have what happened at the Capitol, because you have folks that are so much in denial, they don't realize that you are adding to the pollution and giving a key to your oppressors to drive you crazy. Okay, that's what we're doing if we keep turning those wheels. So let's take a look at, well, what are reparations? I was loving, I think it was, I was trying to see who it was that was, I think it was Deanna who said this, who came up, talked about this biblical scripture. And this actually comes from a number of different scriptures, and it's about the seed and the tree. Consider thou that should a person usurp a grain or a seed from another person, and he should plant it in his own garden in the spring season, till it becometh green and flourishing, until it finally bears fruit and becomes a tree in the summer season. Then in this summer season, a just king desires to restore the rights of the one who was wronged. How would the king accomplish this? Would he in exchange seize a grain or a seed? Or would he seize the tree itself with all its fruit to surrender to the one who was wronged? Surely, surely thou wilt say the tree. So when we start talking about reparations, people want to hand us the seed. We want the tree. Okay, we deserve the tree. And what is happening right now in America is that fear and that fight over that seed that was stolen a long time ago, stolen from Africa. You got to give us the tree. And I don't know that we are aware. I don't know that we fully understand the implications of this, because there's such a fear. There's such a pathological fear. That's what we saw at the Capitol. It wasn't a fringe. It is the underbelly of America. So now let's talk about how you repair something, right? Because I repair a lot of stuff. My daughter repairs. We're repairing people. We love it. It's just, the energy of fixing something. And sometimes, I'm in my house, we're in this house, and it's got a lot of broken parts. So you have to make an assessment. You go, there's these broken pieces. This is what I love about this is what I love about. So dog is barking, life happens. I'm not mad. So you look at this broken thing, whatever it is in your house, and you think to yourself, okay, let me check it out. And you look at it and you go, well, yeah, the structure's not bad. It just needs some supports. We need to clean out some, rusting or whatever it is. You clean it up. And you go, okay. In other words, you're shoring it up. You're shoring it up. That's one thing you can do. But we're talking about America, right? So it's our, it's got the fun. We can just shore it up. And then sometimes you go, yeah, but this one part over here is just totally broken. It needs to be replaced, that part. So you go, okay, well, the rest of this is okay. So I'm going to just fix that one part. And sometimes you look at it and you go, the whole thing is rotten. Got to take it out. Got to rebuild it. So now, when we get to that point where we realize we got to rebuild, because what we keep trying to do, people do this to me all the time. They go, Dr. Joy, what can we do to really fix, the system of policing or education or whatever it is? There's nothing broken about it. These systems were designed to produce the results they get. It just wasn't going to be a positive result for us. But it does what it does. That's what it's designed to do. And no matter what you do to try to tweak it, it's going to come right back around to that, because that's what it's designed to do. So these are systems that have to be, not shored up. It's not just a few pieces missing. Because remember, we can fix all of those things and bring one leader in that topples all the work, that destroys all the work. So what does it mean in Rochester to really implement change? And you really have to take a long look at that and who stands in the way and who has stood in the way for generations in Rochester. We go, God, wasn't that good when we developed that program? Yeah. Where did that go? What happened? Those children were thriving. They were doing quite well. What happened to it? Well, somebody, somewhere in a system designed to take down anything that does not shore up the status quo, they go, okay, we'll throw you some trinkets. We'll do that. But change requires something that, like I said, we go out kicking and screaming. People don't want that change. They don't want that level of sustained autonomy. They don't want that level, of that elusive integration. They don't want that. And so what we have to do and what we have to give our children is we have to give them the tools to not just navigate in hostility, but to insist upon change. People keep saying to me, yeah, I can't wait till we get back to normal. Not me. Dr. Joy doesn't want to go back to normal, because normal is disparity, is it not? Normal, just like Isabel said, is when you start making the abnormal common, acceptable. When you reconcile that this is just simply how it is and how it must be. I don't want to go back to normal. And I hope to God our youth and children refuse to go back to normal. Because you have to keep asking, who's saying we want to go back to normal? Because normal for them and normal for us is two different things. And that's just fine. Because again, as it was said, white people have the privilege to not even have to concern themselves with our reality. But COVID set us all down. And we had a lot of thinking during that time. And during that same time that people were continuing to be brutalized, we were looking on and we were saying, no more. Because I believe when we know better, we got to do better. It's not enough for me. I don't want to come back. There was a conference in Oregon, and it was called overrepresentation. It was the overrepresentation conference about overrepresentation of people of color in the criminal justice system, essentially. They had a gazillion speakers would come every year, and they called me up and they asked me to come back. I said, no. They said, why? I said, because you basically normalize overrepresentation. You should be actually working to not have the conference, right? But again, it became normal. If we say it enough, if we say white supremacy enough, if we say overrepresentation, if we say disparity enough, then we're good. We'll go home, we'll put a poster together, we'll all go home. But you see, that's not change. And what I hear the folks that created this conference, they're saying, we want change. And change means, hey, that means you got to share your stuff. And that's why you had folks at the Capitol, because they don't want to share their stuff. Never have. They said, okay, we've always wanted you to live off the crumbs that fall off the plates of the ones that the meal was prepared for. And we're not living off the crumbs anymore. We're not going back to that. We have a crisis, 2 of them, and we're not going back to normal. Are you following me? And this requires that we put pressure, that we say, no, because what matters in America, I can tell you, what matters is money and power at the end of the day. They'll let you stand on a corner and scream your freedoms all day long. but that doesn't mean it'll be just. It doesn't mean it'll be fair. It doesn't mean that it'll be equitable. And hence, we cannot heal. We cannot heal until there are actionable things. Again, African proverb: when you pray, move your feet. Trust in God, but tie that camel. And that's something that we as a people have to insist upon. As individuals within our communities, people go, I don't know what to do. There's so much to do. One is to shore us up, to take care of yourself. And I'm sure we've talked about that. The other is to be concerned about your neighbor, not just your family, but your neighbor and your community, to support those communities, not just with your voice, but with your resources, right? Because when, at the end of the day, no matter how nice and how wonderful it is, if we don't have the resources, we can't survive. So we need the resources in our community. That's repair. Where I'm not begging you every year to keep my doors open. I'm not begging you for that. And I tell people all the time, it's in the best interest of for-profit to keep us nonprofit. I'm not mad at nonprofit, but for-profit, they write off what they give to us for nonprofit. They write it off as a tax write-off because you'll never be a competitor. Are you following me? These are the things we have to start talking about if we're talking about change, if we're talking about repair, if we're talking about healing. Thank you so very much.